Greetings, friends and fellow rebels. Today, I want to discuss a little bit more about how to center yourself in Source, the whole process of that. We have already discussed finding a space, preferably a natural space, where you're not going to be interrupted, where you're not going to be dealing with external influences that are going to distract you from what you're doing, or perhaps interrupt what you're doing, or more likely prevent what you're doing. Then we talked about putting that visualizing or sensing or feeling or through your intent calling to you a bubble of white energy, white light, and setting the intention that it be protecting you from anything that would seek to harm or interfere with your process. This is an important step because when you call into Source, you want to make sure what you're getting is what you asked for. Now, initially when you call, I think for most of us, simply having the intention of it being the most high divine that we are asking for and nothing less is enough to get a response from that. But if you're somebody who's had to really shield yourself from the world, who perhaps has been a target in the past or currently, if you're someone who's dealt with a lot of opposition, having that protective bubble around you when you call in, you'll still be able to find center of Source no matter how protected you are, because that's what's protecting you. And that's the core of your life. But in doing so, in connecting with Source, you're going to be less likely to make yourself a target. You're going to be less likely to attract predators who would find that bright, shiny energy that you have just brought up a wonderful feast for them. You want to keep that away from you. So, calling it the intention of protection, calling it through a white light, calling upon Source itself, the most high divine, for protection. This is intention. To set your intention, you want to have a strong will. Now, your emotions are the battery, but your mind is the focus. Your mind sets the intention. And what strengthens that is your will, your spirit, your will. So you have a trinity of forces. You have your emotions as a battery. You have your intellect, your mind, your mentality to focus your intent, to create and focus your intent. And you have your spirit, which is going to provide the willpower, the force, to hold the intention and the energy, emotions, emotion being energy and motion, hold that together to manifest what you want, whether that be simply the reality around you or something a little more specific. If your intention is simply to understand Source, to stand in the center of Source, to find that space, to nurture that space, so that you can find it regardless of what happens in your world and in your life. You'll always be able to come back to that center, find yourself, and be able to move forward with grace and wisdom. That's a good intention. That's a good wish for yourself. It's a good start to your path. It's a good evolution of your path and a good continuance, if that's your intention. you shouldn't have any problem finding that center of self. If that's truly what you want to do with that, if that's truly the reason you're calling it, to find yourself, to do what is right for yourself and others, that's the intention you're holding, you shouldn't have any problem finding it. But one thing to be careful of, and one caution I have for you, we have been taught to lead with our mind and to coddle our emotions, not utilize them, but let them pathologize our life. Say, oh, I'm disturbed by this, so I'm going to avoid having anything to do with anything about that because it's disturbing to me. Or this makes me angry, so I'm not going to think about it, or I'm not going to have anything to do with what makes me angry. When we start putting those kind of limitations, when we start coddling the emotions instead of utilizing them to empower us, we have fallen into a trap that's altogether too easy for those of us who like things to be comfortable and luxurious. You have to be careful about that. A challenge every once in a while is healthy. A good challenge every once in a while is healthy. So be careful of that trap. We've been taught to lead with our mind, and our mind will try to take control. If you're standing in source, it's a delicate balance between emotions and mind. It brings through discernment, it brings through intuition, it brings through the spirit, which will hold all of that together and allow our spiritual gifts to flower. But if you're not careful, the mind will try to take over because we've been giving it too much power in our world, in our society. We've been giving it all the power. So your mind will pop up and say, oh, this is bullcrap. This isn't real. This is your imagination. And because the mind is how we focus, your manifestation will immediately go to making all of it your imagination, to getting rid of all the reality of what you're doing and just making it a fantasy, because your mind just focused it in that direction to make that true. And there are people who are very adept at dampening or diminishing or ridding the world of the spiritual power of others through their spiritual power of null and voiding what they find threatening. And since there are certainly those who find spiritual gifts very threatening, you'll run up against that. No matter how much proof you give to people of that nature, their mind will always find excuses, always find reasons that it can be reinterpreted, misinterpreted as something that fits with their life view. And if you buy into it, you will be living in their world rather than your own. Something to think about, and welcome to the woods.